SPS. And finally, from City Newsroom, GES release 2022 school placements. GES announces release rather of 2020 school placements. So that's how the various outlets captured the issue of the computerized school placement system. Then finally, we have the story generating from City FM and City TV actually, and it caught on to some newspapers across the country to do with our Make It Ghana campaign. Daily Graphic captured it this way. 2023 edition of City TV and City FM Heritage Month launched. The Chronicle says City TV launches Heritage Month 2023. The Finder says boosting domestic tourism. City FM and City TV's Heritage Month starts February 27. And then, of course, to us, and this is how we captured that story. 2023 Heritage Month, championed by City TV and City FM, launched in grand style. So those are the top stories for the week. Let's come back to me in the studio, and then let me introduce my guests for tonight. I have Samuel Atamensah. He's with City FM and City TV joining us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then I also have returning Salom Adonu, also here with us at City FM and City TV. Salom, welcome. I think we should start with the domestic debt exchange program, because the whole of today that has been the story on our TV sets, on radio, and indeed during the week all the newspapers captured that story because we saw some key developments around that story. For 8 days, pensioners have been picketing at the Finance Ministry, trying to get the Finance Minister to quote-unquote use the word exempt them from the domestic debt exchange program. A key development we saw was a former Chief Justice joining that protest. And then, of course, we saw the Finance Minister going to Parliament today, that's Thursday, to answer some key questions around that, and also to abreast Parliament with the latest on that development. And after he finished his speech to Parliament, he indeed announced that he had exempted pensioners from the domestic debt exchange program. Now, just tonight, Martin Kpebu, who was with the individual debt exchange holders, he's also announced that they intend to also start picketing to get government. Remember, government has said it's a voluntary exercise. You don't have to join if you don't want to join. We know from what the government has said this week that 83 billion, representing 85% of the participation, was what has been raked in. So I will start with you, Salom, since you are returning. We've not seen you a while. And then first ask you, we saw the Chief Justice, very prominent personality joining the picketing, made some very interesting statements around this whole domestic debt issue, the economy, the Finance Minister himself, how he's, dealt with issues to do with the economy, and the fact that the bond thing was a contract and you don't just get up and abrogate such contracts. And indeed, some MPs have said that he has no right to change that contract, and in the end he will have to come back to square one and deal with the matter. But you feel that based on what we've seen with the Finance Minister announcing that he's exempted the pensioners, the CJ may have really pushed them to take this decision?
Well, thanks, Vivian. I think it's been an interesting turn of events. The domestic debt exchange program, I mean, this is the first time a thing like this is happening in our country, that you have bonds you have expectations of, and all of a sudden you are called upon to exchange those bonds for new ones, under under different conditions or different terms. So it is not pleasant. It's not a good thing. It's not something anybody will opt for, happily. It's the times that have called for it. And so when you are undertaking such a process, as painful as this, maybe the process should have been a bit more consultative. The process should have been a bit more, all-embracing. You don't just announce that this is what we are doing, and so it's voluntary,
Yeah.
so you do it. It's voluntary, but at some point, it didn't feel like it's voluntary. I recall in the case of the Ghana Insurers Association, you know, when they were not happy with some of the things, of course, the minister said he was still open for discussion, but exemption for them was not an option.
Yeah.
If it's entirely voluntary, you don't say that. So it's voluntary because per the Attorney General's opinion of the matter, the finance minister could not push to get everybody to do it because contractually that would raise issues.
Yeah.
But if you want to do it voluntary, yes, that one is voluntary, so people can, you know, subscribe, or people can respond to the invitation, make an offer, and then it goes on that way. It's been a painful process, but kudos to the finance ministry. They've been able to do this in record time, even getting the SLA from the IMF guys in good time. Some of us were thinking they were going to take about 7 months, etc., to do, but by December they had, you know, they had reached that point. And then the domestic exchange or the debt restructuring, we thought it was going to take quite some time to. They found a way of doing it, and you know, a few days ago it closed, and a whole lot. The issue about the former Chief Justice Sophia Akuffo joining the demonstrators or those who picketed at the finance ministry was interesting. I never thought she would do that because, you know, I've seen her on the bench. Longest serving justice of the Supreme Court. I think she was appointed by the Rawlings regime sometime 96, 97, together with Atugba. Atugba retired, and then she stayed on, became CJ and all of that. So for such a person to join, she calls them her peers, to demonstrate, I think it tells us a lot of things. It tells us a lot about our protest culture and where we are going with that. It also tells us that there are certain segments of society when you touch them, I mean, touch, you use advisedly. When you touch them, they may not take it lying down, you know, they may not take it lying down. I make this point because debt exchange program and the issue about the individual bondholders and then the pensioner bondholders, a lot of them belong to the middle class. And my personal view is that where the middle class is active, you know, a lot of things happen.
Get done, yeah.
So when you look at a country which has a very active middle class, things get done. The ruling class always fear the masses. But they fear the masses because I think the masses are controlled by the middle class. The middle class become the engine of the masses. They have the money, they organize people, they mobilize buses for people to go and vote if they have to vote. They give them money, they take care of them, they do a lot of things. But in our country, we've seen a situation where the middle class hasn't been very active. And I hold the view that if this individual bondholders thing hasn't happened, and if government hadn't touched directly the savings or the investments of these individual bondholders, most of whom are middle class people, we wouldn't have seen this reaction. You understand? Okay. The lesson I draw from this is that we've seen a lot of ills in our society. Galamsey, for example, even the borrowing, which largely has led us here. If we had the middle class active, as they've been in the last few days, when their investments were being directly touched, I'm not sure we would have been here. If the middle class had been very active, calling out government like we've seen, even in the case of Occupy Ghana, you know, not Occupy Ghana as we know today, but when Occupy Ghana was being formed, we saw people like Ken Ofori-Atta at the time, Yofi Grant, you know, George Anda, all these guys, Asan Kuma, who command a certain, you know, influence in society, all came together and said, no, we can't keep going like this. The country is being run in the wrong direction. You know, we have to pull the brakes. They called on the system to sit up. And that thing they did, of course, later on, we began to see people like George Anda and co. riding on the back of that to get to parliament, do politics, etc. But the point I'm making is that when we have people of a certain influence, education, you know, standing in society, stand to talk about a certain matter and do it in a certain way, the government must listen. If government doesn't listen, the consequences are sometimes dire.
So where do you place the likes of Fix the Country and Arise Ghana? Fix the Country attempted to join that yesterday.
So I think Fix the Country, Fix the Country started quite well, but I'm not sure they were particularly the kind of people we are talking about. We're talking about the middle class. Fix the Country mostly are young people who are unhappy about a number of things in the country, unemployment, they are not happy with how the country is doing, etc. the maturity with which this middle class people, you know, dealt with the matter or are dealing with the matter is quite different.
They've seen life, they're very...
Exactly, you know, and even Martin Kpebu's group and Senyo Hosi's group. These are, yes, actually. You know, the pensioners are mature, very mature, but these guys are very mature. Yeah. They are young, they are educated, etc. Compared to the fix the country people, they are more boisterous, they are more youthful, and they are more radical, if you like. So we see people like Oliver Barker-Vormawor, etc. Their concerns and their demands are radical. You know, that has a different place. Arise Ghana, I think that's more political. I think Arise Ghana is affiliated to the NDC, I may be wrong. But that also has its place. Groups like CJA, AFAG, etc., they all have their place. But we are talking about the middle class, a group or a segment of society that is seen and respected in a certain manner. When they rise, I think things happen, and this is exactly what we saw. The former CJs, you know, picketing, like Martin Kpebu said a few days ago, you know, represented a certain breaking of the ceiling. So next time, I'll not be surprised to see maybe former President Kufuor, for example, joining such a thing. Of course, Professor Osam, former Pro VC of University of Ghana, joined them, and a few other prominent people voicing their concerns about government policy, voicing their concerns about what government is doing. I mean, beyond this domestic debt exchange, I think our country will be better.
Right. 8 days of picketing and finally got the ear of the finance minister. I remember last week you made some, you know, prominent statements around what we're seeing with pensioners out there, and that wasn't a good sight, and the authorities must step in quickly to solve the problem. Almost a week and a day to that, we're seeing some response. Some say 8 days was too long. Some say, well, whatever it is, what they were looking for, they've gotten. Good enough from the finance ministry?
Well, I think, again, what the pensioners wanted is what they have now. They wanted an exemption, and they do have an exemption. And so I think it's kudos to the resolve of the pensioner community, and then also the final determination of these issues by the finance ministry. For me, I just think that if I have to just stand up for the former CJ, Madam Sophia Akuffo, because you see, I look at it in two ways. One, she has exhibited that she's very Ghanaian, very, very Ghanaian in many ways, and is very committed to the prosperity and progress of this country. In another breath, she has also exhibited that she's not Ghanaian enough.
Why do you say so?
You know, very Ghanaian, patriotic, and wants to see a better Ghana in the form of creating a better future for people who have laid their lives down over 4 or 5 decades for this country. And that's why you find her there. So that's the being Ghanaian side. The not being Ghanaian enough side is this woman, if you know that the Supreme Court judges actually retire on their salaries. So the point I'm making is that she's not a hungry woman.
Yeah.
She is not a selfish woman. But the typical Ghanaian would have sat in her corner because she's not hungry like the others.
So that's the not Ghanaian enough, yes. As a typical would do the opposite of that.
The typical Ghanaian, you retire as a Supreme Court judge, CJ, on your salary.
Your police escort,
you have a police, you have everything. Why would you be on the street? And that's where I say that she wasn't Ghanaian enough. Yeah, and to tell you that that is a higher level of sacrifice that she displayed. Truth is, a lot of them who were there, in addition to coming there, have hospital appointments. The point I'm making is that it was a greater sacrifice that they had to leave whatever they had to do to come and sit in the sun. So I think that, again, the younger ones would have to learn that this is how protesting can be made effective. And on every single day, Mr.
Dr. Edouan
Nantwi took time to explain their position. And what he did, if you studied carefully, he will explain the position of the group vis-a-vis what their expectations are, and then also look at how they are confronting the issue with government. It wasn't offensive. They knew what they wanted, and they were not prepared to bend. They stood their grounds for 8 days. Not a single shot was fired, not a single bullet was lost, nothing. But this is an appearance, and this is what we say. I mean, I saw an old man limping and following the crowd. I mean, I was broken when I saw that. Okay, I don't know the mathematics of this. As in, I don't know what percentage these pensioner communities' contribution will
We're told that is less than 1%.
well,
so.
you know, I don't know for a fact, but I hear that it's not so significant.
Yeah.
2 billion. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
If we knew that it was plausible at some point that we're ever going to do the exemption, maybe, just maybe, we could have done it a bit earlier than allowing ourselves to go through the whole cycle of frustration over an 8-day period. But the sad part is, having made this determination after 8 days, the negative and the backlash, the negative effects will linger on a lot longer than we can expect. To this particular, you know, experience for a very... So this is how I see it.
Wow. I just want your thoughts quickly on two things. We had, you were talking about how it's properly done, seeing maturity at play, but having a member of the Fix the Country group almost marring the whole thing, where we saw good maturity, good, you know, patriotism and all that, and led to Doctor himself not being happy with how things panned out. And your thoughts on that, because we saw a bit of banter with the finance ministry and well, that's talking about Mr. the Fix the Country. Vomawo, yes. Your quick thoughts.
So I think what Vomawo explained they did was to go and solidarize with their senior colleagues, and of course, like Simon explained, and like what is being, the old guys had their approach. They knew what they wanted. They knew how they would go about it. I recall speaking to Dr. Edouan Nantwi on the big issue, and his approach was very different. So Senyo Hosi, Martin Kubo and Co were also on the program, but their approaches were different. These are old people or elderly people who have seen it all, and they have a sense of how they want to get it. So now you see Vomawo, Fix the Country, boisterous, fiery, get to the place, and the finance minister is talking, and you want to interject, you want to throw words at him. It ran counter to what the pensioners were doing, and you know it was not forum appropriate. That was not the kind of place you would want to do that. So in terms of choice of forum to engage the finance minister like that, I think Vomawo didn't get it right. No wonder Dr. Edouan Nantwi and Co were not happy with him, because he was marrying what they had consistently done for a number of days, which was eventually yielding results. There could be a place for that, but not that point, and not where these elderly people had struggled. Somebody said he worked for 4 hours, you know, to get there, and a whole lot. It was not forum appropriate. Right. There are places you can do that, but on this score, I don't think Vomawo and Co judged right.
No.
Yes.
So, your thoughts on it? A few seconds.
You know, when I saw them, it just reminded me of the story of, you know, the people who walk around town looking for funerals to get crashed. You know, there are these people, when they travel and they get to airports, They are filling the form. Where they write occupation, they write protester. Looking for the next protest to join. You know, I think Salom just made a point, and they could have found other ways of showing solidarity, and as many people had done. You know, but you don't see a protest being led by Dr. Edouard Anientwi, a finance-related protest, and you think that he doesn't know what he's about. I mean, he was my teacher. He was my lecturer how many years ago? In 1997. He taught me at the Ghana Stock Exchange courses. You know, and he, Kofi Amwambi and the rest, they know their ins and outs. So don't joke with it, and that's why it backfired. But having said that, you know, these are young people who are looking for space to express themselves. So we have to forgive them as well.
All right, guys.
So just a quick one on the whole process.
Yeah.
I think moving forward, now that the exchange is done essentially, I think the lesson we should learn from this is how to engage people. You know, it's our take it back. It's my money.
Yeah.
I chose to invest it with you. You are using it to do things, and you pay me back later with some returns. If you want to deal with it that way, you know, I mean, come to me properly.
Salam, hold on with that thought. I quickly have to take a break. I'll give you the opportunity, a minute or two, to express that sentiment you want to do. But you're still watching what the papers are saying. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Get 2 months of Showmax for the price of one. It's giving double any day. It's giving celebration Ankasa. All that scandal. It's giving the perfect storm. Shishi. More epic thrills and detective vibes. You go feel, sa. It's giving what it's supposed to be giving and overdose. So subscribe now to get 2 months for only 16 Ghana cedis 99 pesos for a limited time. It's giving Showmax.
So you're watching what the papers are saying. My name is Vivian Kai. Look, I'm here with Samuel Tamens as well as Stella Modonu. We're looking at the top stories for the week. We're wrapping up on the domestic debt issue matter. The finance minister was in parliament today. Finally, the pensioners get what they wanted, which was an exemption. Salam,
yes. So I'm saying that moving forward, anytime we want to do things like this, let's come to the people properly. Like the former CJ says, you don't come to me with a gun to my head that exchange it.
Take it or leave it.
But you portray, or you make it look as if it's voluntary. It is not appropriate. It's not correct. But the real difficulty with this, we are yet to see.
Yeah.
Now, all we've done is just change. We will see in the coming months. But with this same attitude, where you don't really care so much about what the people think, I don't think it will help us. I also want to talk about the Financial Stability Fund, the 15 billion we've been told will be made available. Yeah. We need to start having discussions on when is it going to be made available, you know, how are the people going to access it, etc. Opposed to government bonds. What this means is that after all this is said and done, there'll be liquidity difficulties. Yeah. And if we don't take care, there'll be a run on the banks. There could be problems. People's money, people will have money in banks, but they cannot access the money. Like we saw in the week, I don't know whether it's genuine or not, certain institutions writing letters to schools to give them some time to release money for the fees of people to be paid. We will see a lot more of those. But with this attitude, I'm not sure we'll be happy or we'll survive it. Let's come to the people well. Let's let them understand that, you know, we are in this together and demonstrate it. Demonstrating it means that if you are asking me to sacrifice, we should see you sacrificing as well. Okay. Government shouldn't say that, you know, yes, we are in this, but my expenditure for this year will be way more than what I did last year. That is not reflective of the times. Okay. That is what people are calling for. Size of government, expenditure, etc.
So the
but we've
real
not seen,
expenditure cut.
yes, but we are not
government.
seeing that. Government is planning to spend in excess of 205 billion in this new year. Expected deficit of about 61 billion. Where are we going to get that from in this difficulty? We need to see some real sacrifice from government itself, seeking to cut back on its expenditure, and that will tell the people that government means business. So when government is telling you to tighten your belt, you know that government itself is doing a thing like that.
Great. And I think this story is going to continue because we still have the individual bondholders who opted not to be part of it, saying the maturity on the bonds are up since last week. They've not seen payments. Also, we have the same individual bondholders threatening from next week to also start picketing, properly exempted. And then, of course, other issues pop up. So I'm sure next week we may come and look at this story again, but we have to move on today. Let's move to the northern part of the country and go to Bawku. This week, I think yesterday or so, there was a statement from the Ministry of Information after all those news that new Bawku Naba had been, skinned, and it led to a statement popping up from the Information Ministry. If you guys will allow me, I'll quickly read that. The statement, which was signed by Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, the Minister of Information, said the government condemns developments in Nalerugu today, February 15, 2023, concerning the purported enskinment of a new Bawku number as illegal and a threat to national security. Government further reiterates that Naba Sigri Abugagro Azoka II is a Bawku Naba, duly gazetted and a member of the National and Upper East Regional House of Chiefs. The security agencies have therefore been directed to arrest and prosecute any other person who holds himself as a Bawku Naba. Further, any developments that have the potential to undermine the peace of Bawku will also be dealt with swiftly and in accordance with the law.
Yes, I think it's a step in the right direction. Government has done so well on this score. Government has been prompt, government has been direct, government has minced no words. We are in a certain economic context and economic difficulty. We do not have time for things like this. Things like this we can easily nip in the bud and move on. The matters in Bawku and the Mamprusi areas have been going on for a while. The Kusasi, Mamprusis, etc. They both have their sides of the issue. I'm not interested in going into those because everybody thinks they are right on those scores. There's been a Supreme Court decision, etc. But the point is that there is an overlord of the area. Why do you go installing a new overlord? That is recipe for disaster. Even without a new overlord, people shoot and kill people at will. And now you are going to you are seeking to install a new overlord who will also be lording over a certain group of people in the area. That is chaotic. So I'm happy with the statement from government that they will deal with the people and anybody who holds himself out as the Bawku Naba. There's a Bawku Naba duly gazetted who sits at the National House of Chiefs and the Regional House of Chiefs. You have no business going to install a new chief. That is what we do in certain areas, and there is chaos all over the chieftaincy institution. It is not right. And for a place like Bawku, very volatile, the statement and the action of government couldn't have been more, apt. So
well, what do you say to people who say the government acted rather late? Because that enskinment we saw, I think, early in the morning. In fact, our reporters, they prompted us on that matter. In the morning, this statement came out in the afternoon. Security forces have been...
I'm not so sure about the chronology of events, but there must be a reason any government will not apply a confrontational approach to such a volatile situation. Because post the so-called installation till now, we haven't seen bloodshed. Okay, so on the contrary, I would say that it's been managed well from the government side. I just think that going forward, we should have a mixed approach of engaging, deploying a deeper level of engagement, because you see, the military approach is to just settle the unrest, but the deeper roots of the issue still remain, okay? And I think that the only way this thing can be resolved is for the two factions of the Mamprose and the Kusasis to admit that they are one and the same people. Not until they get to that admission that, look, we are one and the same people, the fundamental problem is about newcomership. Who came here not getting resolved. But let's look at the brighter side. These two factions have actually lived together peacefully for many years than not. Okay, there may be undercurrents, but they have managed it. And to see Bawku go down the way it's going is very painful, very, very painful. Because if you understand the makeup of the northern part of this country, Bawku has been and will forever remain a very, very important part of our northern story. Very, very important. Of the other settlements were all born out of Bawku, from the Nagbewa into the three children and how they set all these Dagbon and all these, you understand? So it's a very important part of our history that we have to preserve. And for now, we may be sitting in Accra, Kumasi, wherever, thinking that this thing is happening at the northeasternmost part of this country.
Like it's so far away from us.
So far, no, it's not. It's not so far away from us, because Bawku, maybe about 70–80% of the people in Bawku will constitute the Mamproses and the Kusasis. But there are houses there. There are Moshi people there. There are Bimobes there. There are all these tribes and ethnic groups that overlap the border towns of Togo and Burkina. And the economy of Bawku is a very critical part of the northern economy. In fact, Bawku as a town or a city commands more than some of the big towns that we know in the northern part of this country. So that should tell you the potential that it boasts to this country. And so I think what I saw this week, which gladdened my heart, was that both the MPP and the NDC seem to have the same position on this new installment. And so I think that we should keep doing it and make sure that, first of all, we bring the tension down, but not to leave it at that. I mean, I don't know any detail except what we all hear. But my call will be to seek audience again with Asante Hene. If it hasn't been done already. Because I think, look, whether you like it or not, there's the look, they are slaughtering people. They are slaughtering people, and I'm talking about physical usage of machetes to slaughter people. So the day I heard the defense minister say that everything happening is just criminal, I knew what he was talking about. And we can't look on for this thing to happen.
Right. I hope the authorities are listening, and then we see some mediation that will lead to some peace in Bawku. Thank you, guys. We'll move to the computerized school placement system. We're told by the Ghana Education Service this week that there was a total of 372,780 candidates who were successfully placed out of the 538,399 candidates. However, 165,619 qualified candidates, representing 30.76%, could not be matched with any of their choices, and they're expected to do the self-placement to select from the available schools. This afternoon, actually this morning, we're at the various places where the senior high schools, Free Senior High School Secretariat has set up to look at the challenges with the placement system, and a lot of wards together with your parents and all that, they're trying to get these things sorted. I remember last year I covered this story. I was at the Nat Hall myself when the placement system had its own challenges, and the same scenes you see. Previous years we've seen the same scenes. Would we ever be able to solve this problem around the placement system using the computerized thing?
I think we should. The computer is what we must deploy to help us resolve the difficulties. In the past, I mean, when we were entering SS, there was this manual system, headmasters in a particular region. Those days you had to choose a school, all the schools in a region. So headmasters in a particular region will go meet somewhere. They will look at your cards, I mean, and in the end they choose their students. It went on for a while, and then the computerized system came to take out the human element. I think it started quite well, and then all of a sudden, the human influences began getting into the computerized placement system with its own challenges, etc. For me, leaving over 160,000 people not we saw a few years ago at Independence Square and then Nat Hall. We'll continue seeing a lot more of those. I think there should be a way of making the system a bit more efficient. I don't know how, but it's their job. They know how to do it. Leaving 165,000 people to self-place, I don't think is the best thing to do. Talking about the computerized system also, it has spawned other difficulties or problems. For example, there is a problem with the public schools and the private schools. I don't even understand how it works. That there's a certain quota system. When you are in a private school, you get public school, you get access to some schools. But you know, there's a whole lot of things around this. You know, we need to be a bit more transparent with the process so that we diffuse the suspicion, we diffuse a lot of these things. That is the only way we can get this working properly. As it stands now, there are private schools who think that, you know, they are not being treated well. Their students are not placed properly. There's some 30% quota system somewhere, you know, but when you look at the public schools and the private schools, on paper, you say a private school is a private school. But there are a lot of private schools which are even not up to the standard of public schools. There are many schools owned by private people, so they are private schools, but they are lower in terms of standard than the normal public schools we see. So if you want to deal with all of them as private schools, so the same standard is applied, and so when you are there, somebody in a public school has a 30% chance of entering a particular school than you, then you are not being fair. I think they are looking at private schools with the eyes of the top private schools in the country. That would be unfair. There are schools which pay 200 cedis a term. For those schools, what can they do? And they are the only schools in the communities. So they must school, and somebody has to set up the school. It is not a public school, it is a private school. You can't deal with those schools the way you want to see schools like Morning Star, etc. Expecting that because the students are there, they have a certain advantage over people in the public schools. That thinking and then that arrangement must change. Until we change that, we cannot have equity. And we'll continue to have these problems of people in private schools not properly placed.
How do we solve this problem?
But I'm just trying to find out what reasons they have given for this huge number of students who have not been matched.
There's not much that was said about it.
Because you see, placed. Because they've not been able to match them.
It's very. I haven't done programming in many years, so I'm struggling to put my words together, and I want to be careful. But with the little I know about programming, unless it's a faulty algorithm, If the algorithm is faulty, then you are going to have this high number of unmatched features in it. But if the integrity of the algorithm is solid and the program works, you hardly ever end up with unmatched entries. This is the problem. Okay? What I suspect is we are having this kind of problem. First, it could be a data processing problem, which is there. And secondly, it could be an issue of a higher degree of unnecessary human interventions. People who try to change things. Yes. I am very reluctant to believe that a computer program will end up not matching people, because you see the variables are there, the constants are there, and they fill, you see, they all fill the same forms.
Yes.
So the data capture is uniform. You know, if you got 0, you got 0. If you got 50, you got 50. It either matches you with A, B, or C. But to match you with nothing, I don't know whether there's a field like that, that if you get so and so and so, it shouldn't match you, means you failed. If there's anything like that, let us know. But when unmatched entries turn out to be mistakes or incorrect outcomes, then we have a problem. And to think that this computerized placement system has been running for how many years?
For more than 15 years.
15, yeah.
And we still record such high unsuccessful outcomes. It means that something seriously has to be done. You see, listen, this is, you are dealing with the future of young people, the lives of people. You understand? So if we don't pay proper attention to this, it doesn't bode well for us as a country.
And the other part is, you said school should open on the 20th. And you are just releasing the placement. And they say, no, it doesn't matter. You don't have to buy anything. No, it's not about, you just have to bath and go to school. So you just bath, sit in a car and go to your school. You don't even need anything, just go. But it's somebody wants to go to school A. His whole life, that's the school he's wanted to go. You've got to put him in school C. He needs time to process. You know, he just doesn't have to go on Monday. I mean, how? When we know what's happening, shortage of food, this and that, the parents must put themselves together.
They should just get the basics. They knew the kids were going to go to school.
No, you see, now some parents will have to be going to Nat Hall and doing all of that. I don't know why, because they finished the exam quite some time back. The results were released, some time back. Why did he have to take this long period for them to release the placement? And why should they go to school on Monday?
I mean, that's just unfair.
I don't understand.
I mean, if the Ghana Education Service, as spirited as they looked yesterday and so determined that schools should reopen on Monday, they should have done something to quicken the process of, releasing the results and then doing the matching. I mean, that would definitely be under your control 100%. Yes. So that you could have managed. But the issue of children being just wake up and go to school does not work. Headmasters, they were supposed to be people who have gone through school, most of them gone through teaching themselves for years, done degrees, master's programs, and then they rise through the ranks to become headmasters. I didn't know that some of them have to be magicians in order to become headmasters, because they have become magicians.
Yes, paying for buying.
If you speak with the regular headmaster of a school that doesn't have a strong backing of an old students association,
you're in trouble.
You will weep. Some of the things that they go through.
Right. Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up on something that Samantha, I'll allow you to speak more on that, and Selo, maybe take a comment or two from you. Make it Ghana.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
It's City on the Go. You don't have to miss any of your favorite television and radio shows on City TV and City FM. Enjoy thrilling content from your world of great television and relevant radio at your convenience. Subscribe to CityTube on YouTube, turn on your notification button, and receive prompts on our live stream